Show me.
Hello everybody, Martial Arts Film Freak here, and I enjoyed ranking the Ong Bak movies, the Tony Jaa movies, so much, those 5 main Tony Jaa films. Had some people participating in the comments, telling me what their favorites were, what their ranking was, and I figured I'd rank some more stuff, and it was a little hard to come up with stuff to rank, you know. It's not like every star has like those 5 movies you can just rank, except for one. Unfortunately, this one's more unfortunately, there's only 5. I wish there was more, but of course we all know what happened and there isn't, and that is 5 Bruce Lee movies. I'm going to rank the 5 Bruce Lee films. The Bruce Lee films are movies that people hold near and dear to their hearts, different ones. People definitely have their favorites out of these ones. They're all great. Most of them are really solid. And you know, everyone has their favorite. Loud vehicle outside. Everyone has their favorite one, and I'm probably going to upset someone with this. What a bitch. Putting this out there right away. Game of Death 2, Tower of Death. Not doing it, not counting it. I've got a review for it. Go watch it. It's not a Bruce Lee movie. Bruce Lee is not in it. They put Bruce Lee in it with not even archive footage, just footage from other movies, and it doesn't count. I don't like it. It gets good when they kill off his character because they can stop making it look like he's in the movie, and it gets better, but I'm not counting it here. And if you are upset by that, just go watch my review and then come back to this one. Or finish this one and then go watch that review. I don't care which order. Here is my ranking of the 5 Bruce Lee movies. Starting off at number 5, the one that I hold in the least regard, but again, I still respect it. I do think it is a good movie, and that is The Big Boss, or The Chinese Connection. Now, the reason that I put this at number 5, and not another movie that we can all agree has way more flaws, is because I don't think Bruce Lee had quite honed his skills at that point yet. Of course, he was already an incredible martial artist. I mean his on-screen stuff. He did not yet have the power, the ability to do whatever he wanted in front of the camera. He had to bow to the director, who really did not like him very much. He was also competing with James Tien, who they were sort of deciding like who is going to be the star of this movie. Is it going to be Bruce, or is it going to be James? And of course, Bruce won that battle. Now, James Tien in this movie is wonderful. I love James Tien in this movie. I think that he owns the first half of this film. Bruce Lee, of course, has a bit more charisma, but I mean, of course, Bruce doesn't fight for the first half, but while James Tien has those fights through the first half of the movie, he is excellent. I think James Tien is great in this movie. But when Bruce takes control in the second half, after James Tien's character is killed off, there was a lot of like back and forth with the director. I think it was Wo Lei. I'm probably wrong about that. I don't know. 1 second, hold on. I'm not great with my Chinese Connection trivia because I don't think it's the best movie, obviously, by its place on this list right here. 1 second. What was his name again? How do you pronounce his name? Why can't I find it? That's not the one I'm looking for. Pronounce it the other way around. Wei Lo, not Wo Lei. Wei Lo. Yes, Wei Lo wanted to, you know, make a kung fu movie that they were making at the time. The movies back then, the style was Peking opera but on screen, and Bruce said, no, not doing that. And so Wei Lo wanted him fired, Bruce Lee wanted Wei Lo fired, and neither of them got their way. They just sort of made the movie. And I don't think most of the fights really hold up to a lot of his later films. Number 4 is Game of Death. And Game of Death is obviously the most flawed of these movies. It is also the one that is not finished. Bruce Lee tragically passed away before he could finish it. He had made essentially the last 20 minutes. He had made the final fights of the movie first, and then he went off to Hollywood to go make Enter the Dragon. Before he could come back and finish it, he passed away tragically, and so they waited until like 1978 to finish it. And why did they do that? It is a Bruceploitation movie that Bruce Lee happens to be in. All of Bruce Lee's fight scenes are fantastic. They are maybe some of the most Bruce Lee you're going to get. He was really honing his skill quite well at the time, and each of the different fights being with someone of a different style, of a different weapon, was really inspirational for future products, future video games that we'll actually get to in a later entry, possibly the next entry. Everything else that isn't those fights, though, is maddening. Drives me insane. It makes me so angry to watch the rest of this movie. Not to the fault of the stand-ins. Every other fight scene in this movie is either Yuan Biao or Kim Tai Chung in a terrible beard and sunglasses and a wig, and the camera in the fights is like keeping its distance and keeping angles to make you try to hide that it's not a double or a stand-in, and those fights are decent, but they don't have that charm that Bruce Lee brings to the fight scene. Just like putting a cardboard picture of Bruce Lee's face on a mirror to blatantly just using footage from other movies, I hate it. I hate it so much. And the only reason it's above Big Boss, Chinese Connection, is for that final 20 minutes. I think the final 20 minutes of this movie is better than almost the entirety of Big Boss. And if you disagree, comment below, because I'm sure a lot of you will probably disagree. Number 3, middle of the road, the one right in the center, dead center between all of them. Enter the Dragon. Now, I know a lot of you are going to get mad at this. For a lot of you, Enter the Dragon is the most important kung fu movie of all time, and you are right. It is one of the very most important kung fu movies of all time, but it isn't Bruce Lee's best. I love Enter the Dragon for a few reasons. Hardly any of those reasons have anything really to do with the fight scenes. I think these are actually some of Bruce Lee's weakest fight scenes, and that is not his fault. That is probably the fault of the director. Just not knowing what to do. I don't know if Bruce Lee got much say in terms of that in his first big Hollywood movie, his only really big Hollywood movie. No, I love Enter the Dragon for the story, for the characters, the villain, the heroes. I think all of that is iconic and wonderful. Bruce Lee, Jim Kelly, John Saxon. This movie made Jim Kelly a star. The villain is essentially Shang Tsung or Shao Kahn. M. Bison, Heihachi Mishima. Like, this is the movie that inspired fighting games. It's a millionaire, rich, billionaire maniac invites a bunch of fighters to his island in what may not be just a tournament. And that's that plot device, that idea alone is probably one of the most iconic, like, movie plots in history. O'Hara is also wonderful. Bolo Young, yes, I don't know why I was mixing up his name real quick. Bolo Young is just announced himself to the world with this one, and you know, he's an awesome character, awesome fighter who dies and passes out due to a nut shot, I guess. What's her name? Angela Mao. Yes, I don't know why I blanked on Angela Mao. Angela Mao is also in this for a very little bit, but she is also excellent in this movie. She actually probably has some of the best fight scenes. I'll stand by that. Yeah, that's true. This movie is full of iconic characters, iconic moments. It's a wonderful movie. I just don't think the fight scenes hold up to much else of Bruce's stuff. I think it's some of his weakest, and that's the reason it's right here in the middle. Now, number 2 and number 1 were hard. This is a very difficult decision. I thought about it for a few minutes, and I have a conclusion here. I don't know how many people are really going to agree, although I think they're kind of recognized as really 2 of his best movies. I think people can mostly agree on that. Number 2 is Fist of Fury. Chen Zhen is one of the most important fictional characters in kung fu movies. He's been played by Jet Li, Donnie Yen, Andy On, and of course the OG, the original, Bruce Lee. I also don't know if this is like the first example of someone walking into a dojo and just beating up all the students, but I'm willing to say it is because it sounds like a thing you could believe. Fist of Fury was the first example of someone walking into a dojo and beating up all the students. It's at least the one that all the other movies, all the other fight scenes that do the same thing definitely modeled themselves after. This was the one where Bruce Lee was given a bit more freedom after Big Boss. This is his second Hong Kong leading role movie. And Wei-Lo had to like admit and be like, okay, you were right. Bruce Lee was right. I don't think the two ever really got along, though, even though Way Low had to admit that Bruce Lee was right. This was also the first movie that Bruce Lee got to pick up a pair of nunchucks. No nunchucks in Big Boss, but there are in this one, and they definitely became his signature weapon. I love that epic shot of Bruce doing that, the wavy arm thing. I'm not going to do it, even though I just partially did. That was excellently referenced in The Last Dragon. That is just a perfect moment. I think this is a perfect role for Bruce Lee, at least at that time. Of course, have to mention the epic moment where Bruce Lee kicks and breaks the sign that says no dogs, no Chinese allowed. That is just a moment that anybody around the world can just see the significance of. Bruce Lee really doesn't have a negative thing about this movie. There is no negative thing about this movie except for maybe like the one kissing scene. Like, Bruce Lee was like a sex symbol for a lot of people, but that dude could not do romance on screen. It was awkward and it didn't work. Everything else, though, solid. Number one, we've already figured it out. There's only one left. We're not going Game of Death 2. We're going Way of the Dragon. Way of the Dragon is, in my opinion, the best Bruce Lee movie. I think it is the most Bruce Lee full product we got. I think he would have, put more of himself into his later movies. We don't get a lot of the philosophical stuff that we do have in Enter the Dragon. What we do actually get is just his best fight scenes and a good dose of comedy. I think Bruce Lee was a lot more comedic than people give him credit for. People think of Bruce Lee, they think of stoic. No, Bruce Lee directed this one. He wrote this one. There's a whole lot of comedy in it. Bruce Lee is a funny guy, and he's not recognized as that, really. You also get Robert Wall, and Hwang In-sik, who are excellent in this movie. I love Bob Wall. I love Hwang In-sik. If you haven't seen Hwang In-sik in the Angela Mao film Hapkido, highly recommend it. He is epic in that movie. I love it so much. But they're great in this movie. You get all of those alley fight scenes, like even just the training scene where Bruce Lee kicks the dude into a huge stack of boxes. Like, both Fist of Fury and Way of the Dragon, Bruce Lee just looks so powerful in, and it's amazing. And of course, that final fight with Chuck Norris. That fight is not overhyped. That is one of the greatest fight scenes ever. Its structure, all of it. Like, those two are just two huge powerhouses that were amazing in their absolute prime. Sure, Chuck Norris went on to do a whole bunch of other movies later. Not a lot of them are very good. I like Missing in Action 3. A lot of people love The Octagon. But this is his best fight scene. The whole format of, first of all, it's in a Coliseum. Like, that's perfection. It's the last movie to film in the Coliseum, but this fight scene I don't think was actually filmed in the Coliseum. But Bruce underestimating and playing Chuck Norris's game, playing at his own, at Chuck's pace, at his tempo, coming back, picking up his tempo, going on the Bruce Lee style, picking up his own style, Chuck Norris getting beat and having to adapt to Bruce Lee, and then eventually just the two having excellent back and forths until Bruce wins and has to snap his neck, unfortunately. Even though he doesn't want to. He even tells him, like, don't do it, I don't want to kill you, and unfortunately he had to kill him. Spoilers for a movie that came out in 1973. This fight scene is brilliant. This fight scene is perfect. I love it so much. It even has a cat. If you don't just like the fight scene, you gotta like that cat. Apparently Bruce Lee adopted that cat. That could be wrong. I don't know. IMDb doesn't really tell the truth all the time. But that fight is perfect. This movie is near perfect. I love it so much. That is my ranking of the 5 Bruce Lee films. What do you think? Tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Give me your ranking. Give me your favorite. Give me your least favorite in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Head over to Facebook, where there is the Martial Arts Film Freak Facebook page, Instagram, Martial Arts Film Freak, Tristan_Glover on the Twitters. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.